You're welcome to The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's our schedule over the next hour. Tsunami waves reach U.S. west coast following an 8.8 magnitude earthquake off Russia's eastern coast. Recognition of the state of Palestine riles up Israeli response at the United Nations as Knesset Speaker Amir Ohana hits out at the UK and France. Plus, Ghana celebrates Panafest and Emancipation Day as it welcomes the Diaspora home. Let's begin The World Today. Tsunami waves have reached the U.S. west coast following an 8.8 magnitude earthquake that occurred off Russia's eastern coast, triggering warnings across the Pacific. The quake, which hit near Kamchatka Peninsula this morning, is one of the most powerful ever recorded. There are tsunami warnings not only in parts of Northern America, but in South America, Oceania, and in Asia. Island-Pacific nations have cancelled their tsunami warnings, and potential threat to all island groups has passed. Fiji cancelled its tsunami watch advisory, so have the Cook Islands and Samoa. Back in the United States, a tsunami advisory for the Southern California coast from the California-Mexico border to the Rincon Point has been cancelled. In France, President Emmanuel Macron posted on social media warning of a tsunami coming to French Polynesia. He says all government departments have been mobilized to protect citizens and urges people to follow the instructions of local authorities. Earlier today, Hawaii's Defense Department Adjutant General Major General Stephen Logan announced the state has downgraded its forecast from a warning of tsunami advisory following the earthquake in Russia. He further clarified that a tsunami advisory means that there is a potential strong current or dangerous waves or near beach areas only. Initial observations revealed waves with heights varying from roughly 0.23 meters to over a meter, with the most notable wave reaching a total height of 6 feet from through to crest. Observers also noted the shoreline water receded by 20 to 30 feet, a possible sign that a larger wave might be following.
The PTWC continues to monitor for more data to update its forecast and for an all clear that they may issue later on. A tsunami advisory means that the potential for strong currents or dangerous waves are expected or occurring for those in or near the water. There may be flooding of beach or harbor areas. Those who have evacuated may safely return home based on county assessments and directives.
We just want to remind folks returning back home as the counties open up these zones to return safely. You know, take care, drive slow. We went into this tsunami warning. We got out of the area, we were safe. Let's return back and be safe. Watch for flood waters in some areas. Check for, do an assessment and check your structures and your homes, those that are close to the shoreline. Like Major General Logan said, the advisory still means that there's energy in the water. So as you return home, still stay off the beach and stay out of the water.
With this downgrade, the Coast Guard will immediately start working with our fellow agencies and port partners, specifically Department of Transportation Harbors Division, with the commercial tugs and the maritime pilots to ensure commercial harbors are safe for navigation. At which point we feel that is occurred, we will open up all commercial harbors for traffic again. So right now those are beginning and we are working very efficiently and it's going to happen concurrently throughout all commercial ports in the Hawaiian Islands to mitigate disruption to the maritime transportation system.
Also earlier, Chile's National Service for Disaster Prevention and Response declared an alert after the earthquake in Russia. It remains in effect for a wide stretch of the country's northern and central coastline, and precautionary advisory was issued for the southern regions of Iceland, Magallanes, and the Chilean Antarctic territory. We'll just go ahead and update you on the alerts in other parts of South America. In Colombia, the National Unit for Disaster Risk Management downgraded its initial tsunami alert to an advisory for the Pacific coast. Officials, however, warn of strong currents and waves expected to reach the coastline between 10 in the morning and 12 local time. In Ecuador, a tsunami advisory was declared for the Galapagos Islands. Maritime activities were suspended and beaches, docks and low-lying coastal areas were also evacuated. The tsunami alert stemmed from an 8.8 magnitude earthquake that hit near Kamchatka in the peninsula this morning. Emergency teams were seen racing into action in Kamchatka. The Ministry of Emergency Situations reported the major earthquake with tremors of up to 8.7 on the scale. The Kamchatka branch of the Geophysical Service of the Academy of Sciences said it was the strongest earthquake in the region in Russia since 1952, after the ministry said that, as a result of the tsunami, parts of Severo-Kurilsk port and the allied fishing area in Sakhalin were flooded. Rescue teams evacuated local residents and around 60 holidaymakers from the beach in the area and in Kamchatka were also evacuated. And out of Russia comes this video showing the remarkable bravery and determination of a group of doctors and surgeons in Kamchatka in the oncology dispensary who continued the surgery despite the quake. The surgeons and nurses stood beside the patient holding medical equipment as tremors rocked the building. Later, the hero surgeon, Lyubov Siplakova, recounted her experience. She said, "There was no panic as they had to work. It was just work to them." The patient remains in intensive care, but her condition is stable, according to the hospital. Sorry, we couldn't bring you that remarkable video of those surgeons still in the theater as the earthquake happened in Russia. Let's bring in now the chairman, Nigerians in Diaspora Organization, NIDO, in Russia, Dr. Godwin Ibe. He joins me now from Moscow. Doctor, thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you so much, Amarachi, for having me. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, very audible, thankfully. Let's begin with the remarkable bravery shown by the doctors in that operating room. I'm sure you've also seen the video. They were still with the patient on the table as the earthquake happened, and they just stood very bravely, not panicking, as they continued with the operations while the earthquake was happening. How are they being commended across the country for what they did, the fact that they actually finished the surgery and really didn't panic under this unpredictable conditions?
Well, yes, indeed. Doctors around the world are brave, especially in Russia. Russians have that extra topping of bravery to be able to still carry out the necessary medical intervention, even in the face of the earthquake. By the way, when we mean the tremors, we mean like just in the operating room or in the hospital, the windows were breaking, shaking, beds were shaking, the instruments were shaking, vibrating, but to still be able to get oneself to perform what is needed, and also to keep the patient calm, because it's also part of the job of the doctor as a psychologist, mini psychologist in the operating theater. Like one would assume, God protects His own people. Many people have noted that the effects of this tremor was not as severe as could have been expected from an earthquake of magnitude 8.8. It was there were no much material damage, or do I say human resource damage, just the building, the glasses, the tremors and all of that. So I think they are commended. The doctors are commended every day in Russia, but especially in this difficult moment.
And they really have to be commended because even though there was damage, wasn't there, across Kamchatka and other regions in the area, but those earthquakes
Kamchatka.
are right, Kamchatka. The earthquakes are quite unpredictable. No scientific measurements can be given, can give predictions about those earthquakes and where they will hit and what the amount of damage would be. But do give us a sense of what areas were affected, because we're seeing pictures of Kamchatka buildings that crumbled under the pressure of the quakes. We also know that there were other regions affected, other parts of these regions around Kamchatka that were also affected by the quake.
Yes, it's unusual. Earthquakes don't happen every time in Russia, so it tells a lot about the building structure. Of course, the buildings are built to be strong, but not built to handle earthquakes every day. Especially in the region of Kamchatka, it's not like a big city, as a town, so the budget is not like in the big metropolis cities. But obviously, the windows were shattered. Some houses, just a few of them were damaged. People noted that they couldn't stay in their homes. They had to go to the street. Yeah, see, obviously the foundation was shaking, but we can see there was no total collapse of buildings, just walls falling from shaking foundation and the material damage that follows from that. So yeah, basically that's the extent. It's unpredictable, like you pointed or alluded to. Otherwise, there would have been a much better preparation. But one thing we could say is that tsunami at the earlier stages was expected because we understood that this earthquake also reached the United States, the shores of the United States, and they were expected. Tsunami was expected, but it didn't turn out to be. It didn't happen. So it's good news for the region and for that particular region of Russia and also the region of United States. So it couldn't be expected, but we are happy it didn't get worse.
And I take it that Moscow was spared, the tremors and the quake. Nonetheless, the country must be standing together right now in the face of the disaster. But give us a sense of what could have happened had there been a tsunami. What would have been the protocol on the ground for preparations for people to get to possibly higher ground, or would there have been evacuations? What would have happened?
Part of those measures were already taken in preparation for the tsunami. People were evacuated from their homes and moved to other regions, especially as you alluded to as well, elevated regions. But Russia has a long-term experience in rescue operations. Russia sends specialists to other regions when they have earthquake like Iran, Turkey. It has been doing that for a very long time. So it has a lot of experience in emergency services, especially of a natural disaster. But natural disaster is just one of the reasons for earthquakes. Yeah, it could also be man-made in a way. For example, during detonation of a bomb or nuclear bomb. I'm not saying that's the case here. I'm just saying there could be many reasons for an earthquake, but this happens. This seems, to the best of my knowledge, to be a natural disaster.
Yes, indeed, a natural disaster. And you already talked about how much damage has been reported. And I suspect that as NIDO chairman in Russia, your concern is with the Nigerians who are possibly living in the regions that have been affected. What have you learned so far about their situation?
Yeah, I've been in contact with people in the region. There's been no human lives lost, just material damage, and it's not widespread. Just some buildings in the area. So it could be worse. It wasn't, so we can only be grateful. But we are helping out as much as possible. And where the need arises to escalate or increase our assistance, definitely we'll be ready to do so.
In general, how are Nigerians in Russia doing, apart from the earthquake and the thankfully now gone tsunami?
Yes, Nigerians are adapting to the very fast-moving geopolitical landscape, especially in the face of the sanctions that the EU are trying to put on broadly on all the Russian economy, which has not worked, and it's keep on applying. Also, the unpredictability of the U.S. foreign policy. If it's going to try to build up diplomatic relations, or if it's going to leave it the way it is, or even make it worse. These unpredictability actually affect the Russian financial market much more than the sanctions itself. And people look forward to interpret the policy, both domestic policy and foreign policy, and what it will have on their lives, personal lives, on businesses and investments. These, I think it's not only in Russia, I believe all around the world, but I'm speaking for Russia. This unpredictability, especially in other erupting military conflicts like in between Thailand and Cambodia, Israel, Gaza, and what it will, how it will affect the whole landscape, geopolitical landscape is also in question. Of course, not everyone has the time to follow up all these conflicts in the world, but at least we follow the news, what is reported. Those who watch the TV and the local news are waiting to hear signs of policies, for example, interest rate by the central bank, or policies put forward to tackle inflation, or bank policies. I think these are the things that most people are looking out for.
Dr. Godwin Ibe, thank you so much. Very glad that you are safe and other Nigerians in Russia are safe at this time. Thank you for updating us on the situation there.
Thank you for having me, and thank you viewers once again for tuning in.
Coming up after the break on The World Today. With more Africans in the diaspora finding their way back home, one American says he traces his roots down to Yoruba land in Nigeria. Stay with us. Welcome back. Into the war in Gaza, hospital sources reporting that at least 6 Palestinians have been killed near a Gaza Humanitarian Foundation aid distribution center. The Israeli military disputes the deaths, saying a gathering of suspects who it said pose a threat were told to move away from the site. The Hamas-run health ministry says at least 104 people have been killed in Gaza and a further 399 injured over the last 24 hours. It says a death toll since Israeli military launched a campaign in response to the Hamas-led attack on southern Israel on October 7, 2023, has risen to 60,138. Many of those killed and injured are still under rubble and in streets. The ministry says ambulance and civil defense teams have been unable to reach them until now. Meanwhile, Israel is furious over the UK and France announcing intentions to recognize Palestine as a state at the upcoming UN General Assembly in Geneva in September. Earlier today, Speaker of the Israeli Knesset, Amir Ohana, hit out at such plans during the 6th World Conference of Speakers of Parliament in Geneva.
We know from our history the cost of ignoring genocidal threats. Now, Khamenei knows the cost of posing them. For since October 7th, the deadliest day for the Jews since the Holocaust, Israel has risen from the abyss to the heights of commanding the skies above Iran. The tables have turned. Those who plotted our destruction brought destruction upon themselves. With the weakening of Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran, we are ushering in a new era in the Middle East, an era of increased stability, coexistence, and cooperation. Rewarding Hamas by recognizing a Palestinian state in light of October 7th will not bring stability, coexistence and cooperation. It will bring more murder of Israelis and Jews. If you wish for that, if you wish what you call a Palestinian state, put it up in London, in Paris, in your countries, which become more and more similar to the Middle East. The so-called peace that some European countries advocate for will only result in more war. But the war we are fighting will result in peace.
UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese has now called on Italy to recognize the state of Palestine, remarking it is overdue after 35 years of negotiations, and also a basic requirement for political coherence and moral integrity. Answering a question about Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's recent comments that the time is not yet right, she stressed that 135 to 136 countries had already recognized Palestine, the state that exists, but is a state in captivity. While dismissing the significance of the Italian government standing on her side, the human rights experts demanded that Rome comply with its obligations from an international law standpoint, condemning the arms deliveries to Israel made by companies that are partially owned by the state. Well, U.S. State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce says Washington will boycott a UN-hosted meeting on the two-state solution underway in New York, calling it ill-timed, unproductive, and a publicity stunt. Bruce remarked that the summit is a reward for terrorism that keeps hostages trapped in tunnels, describing it as a slap in the face of the victims of October 7. She accused organizers of manufacturing the appearance of relevance while real diplomatic efforts were underway to end the conflict. The spokesperson went on to criticize recent statements by world leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, in support of recognizing a Palestinian state.
The UN is serving as host to an unproductive and ill-timed conference on the so-called two-state solution in New York City. This is a publicity stunt that comes in the middle of delicate diplomatic efforts to end the conflict in Gaza. Far from promoting peace, the conference will prolong the war, will embolden Hamas, and reward its obstruction and undermine real-world efforts to achieve real peace. As Secretary Rubio has made clear, this effort is a slap in the face to the victims of October 7th and a reward for terrorism. It keeps hostages trapped in tunnels. The United States will not participate in this insult, but will continue to lead real-world efforts to end the fighting and deliver a permanent peace. Our focus remains on serious diplomacy, not stage-managed conferences designed to manufacture the appearance of relevance. Also, the United States welcomes the ceasefire declaration announced yesterday between Cambodia and Thailand. We commend both governments for taking this important step to ease tensions along the border. President Trump and Secretary Rubio spoke with their Cambodian and Thai counterparts on July 26th to underscore the need for an immediate cessation of the violence. Building on those conversations, the United States, working in close coordination with the government of Malaysia, co-organized the ceasefire talks in Kuala Lumpur on July 28th. These talks provided a vital platform for both parties to come together in good faith and ultimately reach agreement on a ceasefire.
We've also got a brief response from the US President Donald Trump about the UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer announcing he will be recognizing Palestine as a state at the next UN General Assembly coming up in September. Trump made his remark aboard Air Force One on his way back from Scotland.
We've never discussed it, surprisingly. It was never really discussed. Maybe a little bit at the news conference, but he was sort of discussing it with you. We never did discuss it, and we have no view on that. We're going to get a lot of money to the area so they can get some food. He's going to also. I think the European Union is going to put up money, too, for food, and hopefully it's going to be properly distributed, and it will be. I think it will be. We have some pretty good response on people for the distribution of the food. We want to take it one thing at a time. They need food, and they need people to be able to get them the food. Or at least could make the case that you're rewarding people, that, you know, you're rewarding Hamas if you do that. And I don't think they should be rewarded. So I'm not in that camp, to be honest. We'll let you know where we are, but I am not in that camp.
Mr. President,
because if you do that, you really are rewarding Hamas. And I'm not about to do that. So we sent $60 million. It's a lot of money for food, a lot of money. That can take care of people for a long time. And we want to make sure it's being spent properly. And part of the spending is the distribution. You know, if you know, a lot of money's been sent by other countries, but nothing compared to us. But a lot of things are stolen. They send money, they send food, and Hamas steals it. So it's a tricky little game. But we're going to make sure we have some very good people. They're going to be watching it.
Speaking of the European Union, they and the United States have arrived at a trade agreement after months of tense negotiations, but now the deal is done. Critics are saying that Europe caved to President Donald Trump and is getting the short end of the stick. To understand why, we turn to the Deutsche Welle's correspondent Emily Leshner, who's in Berlin. Emily, thanks for joining us. Why are critics saying that this is a bad deal for the EU, despite the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen saying it's a huge deal?
Well, the first and main reason is that 15% baseline tariff that will apply to around 70% of EU goods coming into the U.S. At the very start of these tariff negotiations, Europe was hoping and expecting that it would be able to secure a tariff rate that was in the single digits and really maintain what it had before the second Trump term, tariffs that were around 2.5% to 4%, depending on the product. And then it seemed at some point that Europe and the European Commission lost sight of this goal. President Trump threatened at one point 50% tariffs, and then Europe hoped maybe it could walk away with at least a 10% tax if it didn't seem like staying in the single digits was possible. Then Trump threatens 30% if a deal wasn't made by August 1st. And that's when Europe decides that 15% is probably the best that they can get. So in the eyes of many experts, academics, and even EU heads of state, Europe did cave. You know, the position is that the EU Commission is that 15% is better than the 30 that was looming on the horizon. But others see 15 is not much better than the 2.5% to 4% tariff rate that Europe had in the past. So that is one major reason, is the agreed tariff rate. The other is that Europe also promised the U.S. that it would purchase $750 billion of fossil fuel energy over the next 3 years. That amounts to $250 billion per year or so, which is way more than Europe is even currently importing from the U.S. It's a fraction of it. Last year, Europe spent around $70 billion importing U.S. crude, LNG, and coal combined. So again, it's a fraction of what they're promising every year. And then on top of that, finally, you know, EU policy investment is shifting towards renewables. So this is just not the direction that Europe wants to go in. And Europe also promised $600 billion worth of investments in the U.S. And this comes at a time when the European economy is struggling, and a lot of leaders think that kind of investment could be better spent at home. So a couple of different reasons that people are not very happy in Europe with the trade deal as it stands.
But why would the EU promise something it's unlikely to be able to deliver?
Well, some analysts have criticized EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen for promising investments and energy purchases when they say the power to do so doesn't even sit with the Commission, let alone just the sheer amount of the investment and the purchases that were promised, which now amounts to over €1 trillion. So why would the EU agree to do this? It's also possible that von der Leyen understands that ultimately this is a hard thing to enforce, and that in the past, you know, the U.S. Has let other countries off the hook for not meeting purchasing agreements that commitments that were agreed upon during a trade deal. And one really good example of this is what happened a few years ago with the U.S. trade war with China. China agreed to buy an additional $200 billion in U.S. exports. When they came to a deal, they had a 2-year deadline to do so. And when time ran out, China had only paid around 58% of what it had promised, and there was no penalty. So some are saying that von der Leyen's deal was short-sighted, and then others say that she's playing the long game, that she's placating the Trump administration now with the expectation that things most likely will change in the future. They've changed a lot up until this point. And I mean, even as we speak, there are some whisperings that this deal could even end up falling through because both sides are discovering that they're interpreting certain things in the deal differently from one another. So things are clearly in a constant state of flux. And that could be one reason why the EU felt fine promising some things that it probably couldn't deliver.
Emily, before you go, is there anything in the deal that does benefit the European Union?
That's a good question. I mean, some products won't get hit with any tariffs. There's certain chemicals and aircraft parts, as well as some agricultural products. So it's good news for the aeronautical industry and for food producers right now. The EU is also trying to lock in a 0% tariffs for a few other products like wine and spirits. And, you know, some analysts are saying that the end to all the uncertainty is good for markets. That's one benefit to the deal. And it's also good for investors' confidence. We did see the markets gain a bit after the initial announcement, but again, that could change very quickly, as we've seen. And one industry or sector that might have gotten a better deal with this is the European car industry, because now tariffs on cars have gone down from the 27.5% rate to the baseline at 15. So that is one small upside for the European car industry out of this.
Couldn't have put it any better. Emily, thanks again for speaking with us. Our second break is up next on The World Today. Still ahead. How one woman invests millions of yuan into rescuing homeless dogs in China. Stay with us. Welcome back to The World Today. Many of Nigerians, or the people of Nigerian heritage living outside of Africa, are tracing their roots back home, especially from America. And recently, American singer Ciara found out her DNA led to Benin Republic. The Grammy-winning performer's acquisition of citizenship at a ceremony on Saturday in the city of Cotonou is part of a broader initiative by Benin to attract the Black diaspora. Well, here in Nigeria, I recently got the opportunity to chat with one American, Eric Moore, a consultant with Newsmax, a U.S. media firm, who recently found out his heritage is here in Nigeria. Eric Moore.
Yes.
Welcome to Lagos.
Thank you.
Welcome to Nigeria. I'm sure that when you made up your mind to come to this country, something drew your attention to this place. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure you actually thought that Nigeria would be your first stop in Africa, right?
Well, there's layers to that. So I've been to Africa before, but I was told coming to Nigeria that I have not really been to Africa until I came to Nigeria. And so I'm going to let that just kind of ride a little bit and go with that, right? But no. This is quite exciting. This is a quite exciting experience for me.
And you've only been 2 seconds in Nigeria, and you're already telling me
in Nigeria time.
Yeah, in Nigerian time, and you already have a Nigerian name.
Yes.
What is it?
It is Ajani.
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 Okay.
He who has overcome. Right.
Okay. That's a Yoruba name.
Yeah, that's a Yoruba name. I am a Black American, and there's communities in America, Black Americans in particular, who are really interested in learning their ethnic DNA. Mm-hmm. And so a lot, when you understand the transatlantic slave trade and you've done your history, The majority of enslaved Africans in the diaspora came from West Africa. They're Yoruba, they're Igbo, they're Ghanaians, they're all of these different ethnicities and different cultures who were involved in the slave trade. So as we retrace our ancestry, for those of us who are interested in it, and it's a growing number, especially the younger generation, it's good to sometimes connect and have an opportunity to set foot on your ancestral land. Now, there's a lot of learning that we still have yet to do, but at least through technology today, we can point to a place and say, one of my early ancestors walked on this ground. One of my early ancestors spoke this language. One of my early ancestors ate this cuisine. And for many of us, that's fulfilling.
So you've never traced your DNA, right?
I have.
You have?
Yes, I have.
So what
and my
what part of
paternal
Africa?
lineage, paternal lineage is Yoruba. My maternal lineage is from Sierra Leone, Mende.
Oh.
But my paternal Y chromosome comes all the way to Yoruba land.
Wow.
Yes.
So did it feel familiar for you coming back home?
Yes, very much so. The rhythm, the smells, the culture, the body types, the colors, the skin tones, all of those things felt very familiar. And we call them, in America, we call them ways. The Nigerians have similar ways. In the U.S., Nigerians represent, there's a lot of Nigerians in the U.S., and I'm from Texas in particular, and I used to live in Houston, and the populations there are vibrant. They work in all sectors of society, very present in the academic institutions at both the graduate level and the postgraduate level. So my interaction with the culture and the people has been longstanding. I grew up on an HBCU, historically black camp, college, and university as a young person in Dallas. And so what I would do oftentimes in the summers, I would go hang out at the university. And guess who the majority of students were? They were Nigerians. And so the Nigerian culture, the smell of the jollof, the rhythm of the culture, the colors, the cadence of the language has been something that's always hovered around me. And even through marriage, on both sides of my family, on the maternal side of my family and the paternal side of my family, guess what? Married to Nigerians. And guess what many of them have produced on both sides? Twins. Twins. Twins.
Oh my goodness.
Twins.
Oh my goodness. That is such a Nigerian thing to have twins. Okay, so I'm curious.
And twins had twins.
So lots of twins, and I'm not surprised, on both sides, as you said.
Yes.
Do they give them, the Nigerian names? Because here we have names for twins.
Oh, my goodness.
We have the Taiwo Kede for the Yoruba culture, and then the other names for the other cultures. So do those names exist, on the sides of your family?
Yeah, our sophistication level hadn't gotten there yet. We still have some acculturation to do, maybe the next generation. But there's so many layers to Nigerian culture.
Yeah.
It's layers and layers. I mean, we're talking about, an ancient people. And so it's very exciting. It's exciting. And here's another term that I use. We call them ways. It's what Black Americans use from the early days. They'll say, man, you got ways like your grandmother, or you got ways like your grandfather. And ways oftentimes translates into just the way you are, how you sit in your chair, how you talk, little things you say, how you laugh, how you dress, right? How you move through space and time. And so what I'm finding, a lot of the ways of my kinfolk and family in the U.S. are very similar to the ways of the Nigerians that I've encountered here in Lagos in particular.
I think it's safe to say that you will be answering this question partially because it has to do with jollof rice.
Oh my goodness.
And you already said it, that you have Nigerian roots.
Yes.
You are connected. You found your DNA here in Yoruba land.
Of course.
So tell us, Eric, which jollof is the best?
Well, there's only one answer to that, and I have to say the Nigerian jollof is the best jollof that I've had. Exquisitely exquisite.
Yay.
And I'll leave it at that because I've got friends from other nationalities and I hope they don't see this, but I love the competition, right? I love it. But no, the Nigerian jollof is extraordinarily exquisite.
It is, a meal that brings people together. But
Yes.
there are also other cuisine, other foods in the Nigerian cuisine.
Yes.
There's egusi soup. There is, I can hype the food here.
Yes.
But the more I talk about it, the more hungry it makes me feel. So
Yes,
I'll
yes,
stop.
yes.
But before you came to Nigeria, I'm sure you had impressions of the country, of what it was like, because you'd never been, right? What were those impressions?
I hadn't, but I try not. Impressions, man, we can use that word, but it was more of a historical understanding of the country and how the country came to be, and I wanted to experience it with open eyes, right? And so, perspectives and all of that, they existed, but I wanted to experience it with new eyes, with open eyes. I knew I would find a vibrant people. I knew I would find people that are brown. I knew that I would find cultural diversity. I knew that I would find a very astute and knowledgeable population. I knew that I would find a population that moves at its own rhythm. I knew that I would find a population that is very proud of who they are and the culture that exists not only within Nigeria, but how that culture spreads around the world. So I knew to a degree that I would encounter those things. But it's so much different when you're in it, when you're in the heartbeat of it, when you walk outside and you see the different complexions and the body types and the way that we walk and all of these things. And so it's kind of like being in the past and the present and the future all at the same time. Because when you look at Nigeria, when you look at Africa as a whole, it's the youngest population on planet Earth. And I'm looking at people who've done a lot with a lot, but I'm also looking at people who are doing a lot with not a lot, if that makes sense, right? So I see ingenuity, I see innovation, I see a thirst for life, I see a thirst for progress. I see those things in the faces that I've encountered since I've been here, and that is refreshing because I see similar things in the younger generation of Black Americans as well.
I don't know how much you have interacted with Lagosians in this few minutes. So Nigerians are very interested in the outside world, very interested in communities and societies outside of Nigeria, and they're working to influence stuff. They have communities outside of there. What do you make of the interactions between the Nigerian community and these host communities?
The Nigerian culture is a very ancient culture. And oftentimes when you have a culture that has been continuous for such a long time, there is that curiosity. That's an interesting question, and I'm going to take it back a notch or two. Nigerians and Africans in particular are the most ancient people on the planet Earth. And so when you start from there, a curiosity about life in general is embedded in the DNA, right? It's embedded in the DNA. And a cosmopolitan people, a people who have traveled, a people who have occupied a space in this country, on this continent for such a long time, that's just a natural product of that, a curiosity, an interaction, and those things. And so, yes, America, there's a lot going on in America, and it doesn't surprise me that many Nigerians, whether through having relatives in America or just a simple curiosity about other cultures, it doesn't surprise me that that's a big occurrence. The Nigerian population in America is strong, and I've said that. And there's a lot of exchange. There's a lot of perspectives that are shared across continents.
But do you think it is fair, though, the way the American government has treated, especially Nigerians? I mean, we regard ourselves as really important to the U.S.
Yes.
And we also know that the U.S. government is building the largest U.S. consulate in the world here in Lagos State. There's so many factors that signify the attachment that, both countries share, that Nigeria shares with, the United States. And they tend to think that some U.S. policies against Africa are quite unfair.
Yeah, I can't get it. I'm not a politician. I can say that, and I'm not going to get into political dynamics. But what I do know is having an opportunity to interact with the cultures going both ways. Nigerian with American culture and Americans with Nigerian culture is a good start, right? Learning more about each other, learning more about the work ethic, not only of Nigerians in Nigeria, but Nigerians in the U.S., learning more about the educational component, the highest, most...
You know, the way the American government has treated, especially Nigerians. I mean, we regard ourselves as really important to the U.S.
Yes.
And we also know that the U.S. government is building the largest U.S. consulate in the world here in Lagos State.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's so many factors that signify the attachment that, you know, both countries share, that Nigeria shares with, you know, the United States. And they tend to think that some U.S. policies against Africa are quite unfair.
Yeah, you know, I can't get it. I'm not a politician. I can say that, and I'm not going to get into political dynamics. But what I do know is having an opportunity to interact with the cultures going both ways. Nigerian with American culture and Americans with Nigerian culture is a good start, right? Learning more about each other, learning more about the work ethic, not only of Nigerians in Nigeria, but Nigerians in the U.S., learning more about the educational component, the highest, most educated immigrant population, for lack of a better term, in the U.S. is the Nigerian population, postgraduate degrees and postgraduate degrees. So I think the more Americans know that story in general, I think the more there's opportunity for those bridges to be built.
So talk some more about that, the influence that these Nigerian communities have in the U.S. We do have the highest number of international students in your universities. Mm-hmm. HBCU universities have a lot of Nigerians.
Yes, of course.
And there are many more still waiting to join the population there in the United States. And I know that they have such an influence on American culture now,
of course.
You know, and
yes.
on music, on food, and
music.
everything
The
else.
music is,
oh
my God. Yeah. The next level of music is just out of sight, right? You know, with the the Afro beats and all of the music that's coming out of sight. So the whole music game is just locked down for the next 100 years. I can tell you that. But no, so I'll put it to you like this. When I look for doctors in the U.S., right, I have to go out of my way to not find a Nigerian doctor, right? When I look for cultural influence, to your point, so many of the Nigerian artists are being played in heavy rotation in the U.S. We've got little kids talking about Burna Boy, right? I mean,
and Davido.
And Davido and all of them. And so that's like way cool. And I think the more that continues to happen, I think bridges, again, have the opportunity to be built. But let me also say, and here's something that I've noticed and I want to encourage. As Nigerians come to America, take time to understand the Black American experience, not from what you're getting from a distance, but understand the historical dynamics of Black Americans from the inception of being in America to current, and learn about those stories, and learn about the stories of success, and learn about the stories of resilience, and learn about the stories of spirituality, because you're not oftentimes going to get that in a mainstream sense. And you have to dig sometimes deep to find it. I was at a dinner with a business partner of mine, and he's Nigerian, and by the time we got through the Yoruba and Igbo dynamics and finally ate 3 hours later, right? We were able to talk about substantive things. And one of the things that one of the guests at the dinner said, she said, I'm learning so much about the Black American experience that I didn't know. I've been here for 10 years, and I'm still learning so much that I didn't know that was based on preconceived notions. And so if I have anything to say in that regard, take a little time to do that, as I have to take a little time to learn more and dig deeper about Nigerian culture. And what you'll find, I think, oftentimes are similarities. Similarities relative to the pursuit of education, similarities relative to perseverance, similarities relative to pride, similarities relative to just a deep belief in the strength of self and the ability to progress in this world. And I think once you have that, I think the future is going to be bright between the two cultures.
So you have now experienced Lagos.
Yes.
Hopefully you will be back.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Hopefully you will be back.
Frequently.
What is the message you're taking back home to friends and family, those on the Nigerian side, and those who have no idea what Nigeria is about?
Make the trip, come home, understand and feel what it's like to set foot in Lagos, in Nigeria. Experience the people, experience the culture, understand what it feels like to set foot in Nigeria, in West Africa. Spend time, meditate, get to know people, absorb the culture, and I think you'll be richer for it. I think you'll be more whole for it. I think you'll be more knowledgeable for it. But I also think you'll be more spiritually attuned for having that experience. So I intend to come back to Nigeria. I intend to bring my family back to Nigeria. And each time, I'm confident that I'll learn more and more and more about the people and the experiences.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Yes.
And we hope to welcome you back.
Of course you will. You'll see me soon.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Yes.
And as we end the program, a dog-obsessed woman from Jinan, eastern China's Shandong province, has invested 3 million yuan, that's $420,000 over the past decade, to rescue more than 600 homeless dogs, providing them shelter in a 4,000 to 4,500 square meter facility. Well, the stray dog shelter has relocated 5 times in 10 years. To date, she says she spent over 3 million yuan. She sold 2 small houses and currently faces debts exceeding 200,000 yuan. But these furry residents provide Liu with immense motivation. She decided to rescue the dogs as a path from which she was a path of no turning back. Despite the difficulties, she continues to care for the dogs despite her debts as well. Well, great work she's doing. Hopefully she can get out of this debt. Thanks for watching The World Today. I'm Amarachi Bani.